Hey guys, it's Joe with VMP. Today on Shop Talk Saturday, we're going to talk about how to get your car ready for the dyno and making sure that all your ducks are in a row so that you have a successful dyno trip. So step one to having a successful dyno trip, if you're getting your car tuned or even if you're just bringing it to a dyno to be data logged, is bring the device with which your car is tuned, whether that's an HP Tuner's Engage or an SET X4, RevX, whatever SET device you may have, and making sure that either of these devices are completely up to date by checking with the respective software manufacturers to make sure that you have the most up-to-date version of the software on your device. One of the other overlooked parts is making sure that you actually bring the cable to hook the device up to the OBD2 port on the car. Say for example, we're out at a mobile dyno event. I don't bring a lot of spare cables with me. If I had to use one on the car before you and give it to that guy, I may not have a spare cable to hook it up to the OBD2 port. And same goes for this Engage over here. And if you've really done your homework, you've talked to our sales guys and confirmed that the device that you're bringing is actually going to work for your dyno session. For example, some of these Engages come equipped with Lund Racing software. We cannot tune Lund Racing Engages. Do not bring me a Lund Racing Engage and get upset when I can't dyno tune your car because of that. Another thing you want to be sure of is that these devices are either married to your vehicle or married to no vehicle at all. What does married mean, Joe? It means that you ain't gonna be no cheating trying to use your device that's married to another car on your car. So now let's cover another thing that's kind of overlooked when people go to bring their car to the dyno. What tires are on your vehicle? If you're gonna bring your car to be put on the dyno, in most cases we're gonna prefer that your car be on just a basic all-season tire, no drag radials, no bi-ply slicks. We really want your car to be on a good condition, standard street tire. And a good way to do a quick visual inspection on your tires is to confirm that you have at least 230 seconds of tread. Your date stamp on here, if it's built within the last century, the last four of the DOT on your tire is going to be the week it was built and the year it was built. So this tire is a 13th week of 2014. So this tire is old, but if you visually inspect the tire, there's no dry rot or anything like that. If you bring a bad set of tires that have dry rot, there's a higher risk of the tire blowing up while it's on the dyno. Could potentially take out the whole side of your car and total the car. Don't want that to happen, so make sure you have a good set of tires on the car. If you brought your car on drag radials or slicks, it's going to reduce the measured horsepower we're going to observe on the dyno, and it's also going to run the risk of having a blowout or a failure because the slicks, drag radials, if they're operated at low pressure, can generate a very large amount of heat that sometimes the tire can't handle, and eventually you have a tire failure. So the next thing you want to be able to check off your list of things to do before I bring my car to the dyno is make sure your car is clean. That's both the outside of it, the inside where I'm going to be sitting the whole time, and underneath the car. A lot of people don't think of this, but when your car goes up on the dyno, there's usually a lot of vibration, a lot of shaking and everything else going on. If you have a lot of dirt and stuff in your wheel wells, and during the process of it shaking and vibrating during the course of a pull, it throws it all down onto the roller, we can actually run into issues where your tires start spinning on the roller because they're moving against sand instead of a knurled roller. If you really want to make sure you have all your bases covered and you're one of them stancy boys that likes lowered cars and hella flush and all that stuff, make sure you bring some 2x6s with some angle cut in them so that you can help the entry and approach angles of your vehicle on our dyno or on someone else's dyno. Generally we don't have issues, but on super low cars, some of the lowered Corvettes with splitters and stuff like that, it can make it to where we almost can't even get the car on the dyno. Ripping your bumper off before you even get the car on the dyno would not be a good time. So if your car is lowered and you have a means by which to raise it before you bring it to a dyno, probably a good idea. If it's on air ride, make sure you show the dyno operator how to increase the ride height on the car to get it on the dyno more easily. Now let's get into something a little bit more specific about the setup of the car and everything like that. Next up on this fountain of information, spark plugs. This little guy right here. You see this? This is what makes your 4-stroke engine go bang. When you're bringing your car to the dyno, you want to make sure you've got a good set of spark plugs in there. If you have added a power adder to your car, you want to make sure they're heat ranged right for your setup and that the gap is appropriate for your setup. If you're unsure about the age or condition about the spark plugs that are in your car, or maybe even which plugs you should even be running in your setup, make sure you reach out to sales or support to get that information you need before it comes time for your dyno appointment. It would really suck to bring your car all the way here only to have us not have the plugs you need in stock or not have the time to actually swap them out for you before the dyno tune. We usually pack things pretty tight to where if something is wrong with the car and we don't have a part here, it's the difference between being able to tune the car same day and not being able to tune the car same day. So it's another one of those things you need to make sure you have lined out before you go to bring your car for a dyno tune. Next topic is sketchy stuff and fuel leaks.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. No, Will Robinson. Danger.
If you've touched a fuel line on your car or you've installed nitrous or anything of that nature, you want to make sure that the fuel lines are routed in such a fashion that they're both affixed to something that is not going to move and that something that it's affixed to doesn't ever get hot. Don't affix fuel lines or nitrous lines at or near an exhaust manifold. Those get hot during a pull. Those get hot at idle. Those get hot everywhere. You get a line hot, it has a potential to burst and catch fire. Nobody wants their car to catch fire on the dyno. That's not a good time. Also on the front of nitrous, you want to make sure that you have nitrous jets installed and that you did not miss or move a decimal place when installing the nitrous jets. You also want to make sure that the nitrous jets are sized for the fuel that you plan on using. If it's a wet kit, the fuel jet for nitrous is different on 93 or a gasoline-based fuel versus what it is on E85. You want to make sure that the fuel jet that you have installed is commensurate with the fuel that you're going to be running. If you have a centrifugal supercharger or a turbocharger installed on your car, please, please, please make sure that your boost couplers and everything are good to at least 20 PSI. If after the first dyno pull I make on your car, I blow off a charge coupler, we are immediately going to charge you a boost leak test. Because we've run into situations before where you tighten that one coupler and then another one goes and then another one goes and then another one goes, and then I'm stuck on the dyno for 2-3 hours getting half pulls in, blowing charge couplers off to spend 20 minutes putting a charge coupler back on, and that's not good for your pocket and that's not good for my time. So in an effort to help alleviate problems like that, the first time a charge coupler pops off, we're going to charge you a boost leak test. We're going to test everything and we're going to do what we can to make sure that you don't have any more boost leaks or charge couplers popping off. You also want to make sure that the pulley size you're running versus the belt size you're running is going to leave you with an adequate amount of tensioner travel to be able to support the setup at higher boost levels. If you install the supercharger kit yourself, another thing you're going to want to make sure you've done correctly is make sure that you have the belt aligned properly. Just because the car is fine at idle doesn't mean it's going to be fine at wide open throttle when there's a whole lot more load on the belt and a whole lot more swing of the tensioner. You don't want to be throwing belts on the dyno because that, again, chews up dyno time and can possibly lead to increased costs for us to either fix the setup or for us to diagnose what's wrong with the setup. And then we're going to talk about fuel injectors. Before you bring your car to get dyno tuned, I want you to know exactly which fuel injectors and coil packs are in the car. Just so you guys are aware, if this is a Ford car we're talking about, we do prefer stock Ford coil packs. And there is a kind of like a set list of injectors we prefer to tune with, especially when we're doing stuff on the dyno and it's not R&D work for ourselves. So make sure you get with us, you get the part number off the injector, and we cross-reference that with a list, confirm it's an injector we're good with tuning, and then we're all happy. A lot of times we see people buy used cars, they get a list of modifications that was done to the car by the previous owner.
I bet you he's got more than 100 grand under the hood of that car.
All to find out that some of the stuff the previous owner said was done to the car isn't done to the car. And that's not necessarily that the person selling the car is trying to be malicious. Sometimes they just don't know or remember what was in their car. And that can lead to hours of frustration from a tuning standpoint, trying to tune an injector that isn't there or tune the wrong injector. So step one in making sure the right injector's in there is to just simply look at the part number on the injector. Injector Dynamics laser etches the bottom of all their injectors, and they also put serial numbers on the injectors so that they can cross-reference them with their database to see what the injector flowed when it left their facility. So another thing that can cause more problems than you would normally think it would, and if you're outside looking in, you never think of it, but exhaust touching pieces and parts on your body can cause false knock. Big surprise for some of you, not a big surprise for others of you, but make sure that when you're going down the road, you don't hear your exhaust rattling against a metal panel. Make sure that your AC stud doesn't hit the long tube header that you installed on the passenger side of your S550 or the steering shaft. Make sure you don't have any exhaust leaks. Those will skew the values that we see in the tune file if they're upstream or near the O2 sensor, even if they're downstream. As long as it's near the O2 sensor, you can get skewed values that are near idle. In some cases, if it's upstream, you can even get skewed values at wide open throttle in terms of what air fuel the car is actually running. So, at the end of the day, make sure you don't have exhaust leaks. Exhaust leaks are really annoying to me. I'm sure they're really annoying to some of you. But yeah, make sure your exhaust isn't touching, make sure you don't have exhaust leaks. If you've ever watched any dyno fail compilation videos, you've probably at least seen a drive shaft come out of a car once. So if you've installed a drive shaft on your car, or even if you haven't and you just want to make sure that the condition of your drive shaft's good, hop into the car, make sure your U-joints are good. If you don't have U-joints, make sure that your center support bearing's good. And if you've recently installed a drive shaft in your car, you want to take it out on a test drive on the street, bring it back in your shop, jack it up, put it on jack stands, and make sure that your drive shaft is still tight. If your drive shaft comes through the floor and smacks me in the leg, I'm going to be really mad. So in reference to the cars that we tune most commonly, it's going to be a 96 to 2019 Ford Mustang, and all of those come equipped with one of these. They may look a little bit different than what this looks like, but this is a mass airflow sensor. That measures the amount of air that is going into your engine at all times. So bad things that can happen that can cause issues on the dyno is things like vacuum leaks or air leaks in between the flange on the cylinder head all the way to the mass airflow sensor. Anything in between there has the potential to be a vacuum leak. So, or what we most commonly refer to as a vacuum leak. So you want to make sure that all of your connections go into the cold air intake, the air filter, the intake manifold gaskets, the PCV connections, the throttle body O-rings, just everything. It has to be sealed like it was factory, or we'll run around chasing our tails, trying to correct for something in the tune that should not be corrected for in the tune. Or we have to do a smoke test to confirm where a leak's coming from. So all of this is part of a process to help make your dyno day go as smoothly as possible. At the end of the day, what it really boils down to is taking some pride in your work that you've done to the car, or someone else has done to your car, and taking pride in the condition that your car's in, making sure your car is absolutely perfect and ready to go to the dyno before it goes to the dyno. If you have any questions or concerns about your dyno tune appointment or getting a dyno tune appointment set up, make sure you reach out to sales and support. If you want to see more videos like this, or you have some suggestions on what content you would like to see, make sure you hit us up, hit that like, share, and subscribe button, and hit the bell for notifications on YouTube.